The biggest questions going into game week 13 is what to do with Matty Cash, Jarrod Bowen. Who should we captain? Well, if you stumbled across this video, you are in luck because I own both of those. I obviously need to pick a captain and I know pretty much what I am doing going into this weekend. So if you are new around here, welcome to the award-winning channel. I promise that's the last time I would do that. Make sure you do drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, so for a bit of context, I have 2 free transfers available, 0.4 million in the bank, and my rank is 541,000th in the world. I'm pretty happy with how the season's gone so far. In goal, I am one of those Areola owners, and it has been painful to say the least. However, I don't see a reason to be selling him. Yes, I think probably long-term Fulham's Leno is a better route, but Areola's been okay on the bonus points. It's just because they haven't kept a clean sheet. That double-digit haul is coming. Maybe away against Burnley is the time, but even still, it isn't a time to be selling Areola going into the weekend. And you can see on my bench, I have Strakosha. He ain't going nowhere because he is 3.9 million, as cheap as they come. I don't need to be making any goalkeeper transfer for my team. So Areola remains for another week. Moving into the defenders, and yes, I was one of those managers that sold Shimikas for Livramento last weekend. And let's just say a 15-point swing wasn't nice, but we still got the green arrow, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world. So here's how my back three is looking as we speak. Again, no transfers have been made to these players. Livramento at home against Chelsea, not the best pick, it is worth noting. I know I'm a Chelsea fan, but I kind of fancy Chelsea to at least score against Newcastle. I think they have the press-resistant players to get by with that high press that Eddie Howe does. And also I think they have the physicality and the players available to actually hurt Newcastle in different areas. So might be biased talking, but because of Newcastle's ownership right now in the game, it feels safe playing the Livramento pick, knowing that Lewis Hall is ineligible to play against Chelsea as we speak. Gabriel away against Brentford, absolutely fine. Kind of fancy Brentford to score, but the Arsenal ownership in defence will be quite high this week, so you need to at least have some sort of ownership, and Gabriel is my man. And Guy away against Luton is absolutely fine. So you can see on my bench right now, I have Matty Cash as my first sub and of course my 4th defender in the game. Now, away against Spurs isn't the best fixture, and I would prefer to play Livramento over Matty Cash. But then they do have Bournemouth away in game week 14. Then they have some really tricky fixtures after that. So at the time of recording, and we will come on to the midfielders, Cash is a player that I am debating selling, but I'll give you a bit of an idea who I'm planning to sell into once we get through the midfielders. Next up, the midfielders, and again, this is my midfield without any transfers made. So players that are just absolutely locked in for this week include Son, Palmer, Saka, Salah. So I'm only left with one player that I could potentially sell out this weekend. Now, it's worth noting, Palmer against Livramento isn't ideal, obviously having a defender against one of my attackers, but sometimes it is what it is. You have to bite the bullet in these situations. But Bowen is the big question mark. Now, it's worth noting, we should get some Friday press conference news from David Moyes, or at least some sort of rumours on Twitter to give us an inclination whether Bowen is going to be available or not. So I really would note, I am going to do a live stream later on today discussing the press conferences. So if you aren't subscribed and you want to keep up to date with all of the injuries, make sure you are subscribed and jump onto that live stream later on, probably around 4 p.m. UK time, 4:30. But if Bowen is at least ruled out for one game week, I'm going to sell him. Because I have 2 free transfers available to me, I know I have built up some value in Bowen, but one game week can lead to 2, and the Christmas period is so congested with deadlines, weekend, midweek. We don't really know how long Bowen could be out if he is ruled out for just the weekend, as David Moyes might say. So Bowen for me is going to be transferred out if we get any idea that he's unavailable. And there are 2 options available to me, Eze and Mbeumo, and I want to quickly deep dive into both of those before telling you my top pick. So as I mentioned, Eze and Mbeumo are my 2 top picks to replace Jarrod Bowen. I like Cole Palmer for those that don't own him, of course, but I actually own him myself. So obviously that is slightly biased towards my decision of these 2 players. Also, it's worth noting, you could go for some other differentials out there in the game, but Eze and Mbeumo for me are the top 2. Now, Eze is a differential in himself. He's only 4% owned. And you can see with the fixtures, he has Luton away in game week 13. Now, I know quite a lot of the FPL community are going to be moving towards Mbeumo. And the reason being is because even though game week 13 isn't the best entry point. A lot of managers penciled in game week 14 as the time to buy him. At home against Luton, then against a Brighton team who really struggled defensively, then Sheffield United. Those three as a block for attacking players are some of the best that you can have. So Mbeumo, I think, is going to be a player that a lot of managers are just going to buy a week earlier than what they intended. However, Eze, cheaper and at 4% owned. If you were to go in on him with that Luton away fixture and he does go off, you're going to get some massive rank rises with just owning him alone as a differential. So I definitely could see a world where you could do Eze for game week 13, then move him to Mbeumo in game week 14. But we know how FPL works sometimes. Injuries arise, lots of things happen, and before you know it, you're then stuck with Eze. Now, it's not a bad player to be stuck with at all. I think he could do really well over the next 3 fixtures, but I think you want Mbeumo for that home fixture against Luton. And for me, Mbeumo is the man that I want to bring in for my specific team. I do like Eze, though, as a differential. I would love to bring in both, but I just can't really justify selling Cole Palmer as part of my team. I just like him as a bit of a gem going forward at 5.2 million. You can see the data. XG for Mbeumo is fantastic at 0.55 per 90. But actually, Eze is a bit more of a well-rounded asset. And I really do like the way that he contributes with goals and chance creation. So Eze, an unbelievable differential. I'd love to buy him for this weekend. But I'm just thinking a bit more long-term. And Mbeumo is going to be my Bowen replacement if Bowen is ruled out this weekend. So as I discussed, Bowen to Mbeumo is my planned transfer if we get an idea that Bowen is ruled out. And this is how the team would look. Again, it isn't ideal because Livramento plays against Palmer and Mbeumo plays against Gabriel. So it's not ideal, but as I said, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet in these situations, knowing that the player you're bringing in is a bit more of a long-term move rather than that game week in isolation. And moving into the forwards, this is an area that I have no issues with. I know Haaland's currently flagged in the game, but I believe he has trained. Don't quote me on that. We should get some information today from the press conferences, and again, I will update you on that live stream if we do hear any concrete news. But I will be astonished if Haaland doesn't play at home against Liverpool. And then of course Watkins away against Spurs, a player I actually thought could be potentially transferred out, but with the suspensions to Romero, the injury to Van der Ven, it is quite a clear keep for somebody like a Watkins. And when we go over this Christmas period with so many games and so many close proximity of one another, you want the players that you know are going to play 90 minutes, and Watkins ticks those boxes. So Watkins definitely remains in the team. So this is how my game week 13 team is looking with the intended transfer of Bowen to Mbeumo. Now, if Bowen is actually past fit for the weekend, I don't want to be selling him in game week 13 because the away fixture against Burnley is fantastic. So if we do get confirmation that Bowen is fit, and it's worth noting, Matty Cash has been training and he will be available for the weekend. We've had some credible sources quote that. I will then do Cash to Saliba and go for the double Arsenal defence. And if I was to make that move, then Livramento would become my first sub. I would then have Saliba, Gabriel and Guy as my back three. And of course, Bowen would remain in the midfield for that fantastic fixture. And then I would have a bit of a headache in game week 14 where I want to sell Bowen to Mbeumo for that Luton fixture. So that is the plan, guys, with the transfers. I'm not going to make any move until the Friday press conferences where we get a bit more of an idea on the status of all of those players. Now, in terms of captaincy, this is the other major headache that a lot of FPL managers have. I'm currently leaning towards Son, but I need to get a bit of an idea in my head whether the actual creativity of the team is going to be affected with the loss of Van der Ven and Romero. A lot of people don't realise that, but the actual build-up phases that Tottenham create for themselves from those two ball-playing centre-backs actually is the kind of start of where they actually create their chances. So I need to have a little bit of think about whether Dyer and Ben Davies are really going to negatively affect the build-up phases of Spurs, because I think that will actually just generally impact the team in a bad way. Also, no Maddison is a big issue for the creativity, but Son against Aston Villa, a lot of people talk about the high line. Yes, they do play a high line, but Unai Emery knows they play a high line, and he knows that Son's quick, so he's going to be putting in placeholders in order to stop Spurs having Son. I think a lot of people think that Spurs are just going to kick the ball over the top, Son's going to run through and score a hat-trick. Could happen, but Unai Emery knows that they could do that as well. So there's going to be put things in place to stop Son just running over the top of that high line. So I don't think Son is absolutely locked in for goals against Aston Villa, but right now I do have him as my captain. Just obviously a goal for a midfielder is a point extra than a forward. I could be tempted to go to Haaland just because Liverpool City, for me, screams goals. I think that's going to be quite an open game. I don't think Liverpool necessarily have the midfielders available to them to actually put up a resolute performance like we saw Arsenal do with the box that they played. So I think there's going to be goals in that game. Haaland could easily become it. Nobody likes captaining in the early kickoff, though, it is worth noting. So again, I will reveal my transfers and my captain in my deadline live stream Saturday morning. So again, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and let me know who your captain is right now going into the weekend. Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's Game Week 13 team reveal video. I really hope it's provided some value. And as I mentioned, make sure you are subscribed to the channel as I will be doing a press conference roundup of all of those important injuries. And I will be doing a deadline live Saturday morning, revealing my exact team and answering any of your last minute questions. Thank you so much once again, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.